か。皆さんこんにちは。
Yes, hi everyone.
これからのセッションはですね、
So in this session,
そしてメルペイの
we will talk about Mercari, Merpay,
AI 時代のプロダクト
product development in the AI era. We will have the product heads talk about this topic, so it will be about a 45-minute session.
後半は QA セッション
In the later half, we will have Q&A. We would like to make it as interactive as possible.
思っております。よろしくお願いします。
So please stay tuned to that.
温かい拍手ありがとう
Thank
ご
you
ざい
for
ます。
the warm round of
はい、
applause.
でちょっと簡単に
And
最初の
we would like to do a quick self-introduction of the presenters. On the left, we have Lee. Lee, can you do a self-introduction? Yes, hi, my name is Lee. As mentioned just now, I'm at the product side and also the growth side at Merpay. Nice to meet you.
古澤さんお願いします。
Furusawa, please.
古澤です。よろしくお願いします。
Yes, my name is
今
Furusawa.
これちょっと VP of Marketplace Core って
On the slide here, it's written as VP of Marketplace Core. You might be wondering what I'm in charge of. So flea market, marketplace app, B2C, C2C, I'm the representative of that.
この部分のプロダクトの
And I'm also in charge of the marketplace product as a
最後に
head.
なりました浦部と申します。
Okay, lastly, my name is Urabe.
いうふうに申しま
My
して
Slack name is Sachi.
今マーケットプレイス事業の HR のディレクターをやっております。
I'm the
よろしくお願いします。
marketplace HRBP director. Nice to meet you.
はい、じゃあちょっと本題に入っていこうと。
Okay, so let's jump into this
ま
right
ず
away.
最初のお題というところで、
So first
抽象度
topic,
のお話なんですけ
It
れども、
might be a bit of
AI 時代のプロダクトマネージメント
abstract topic.
我々どう捉えているのかという
So
とこ
how
ろ
do you
から入れれ
view
ば
product
入れればな
management
というふう
in
に
the
思
AI
っておりま
era?
す。多分今プロダクト開発に関わっていらっしゃる方々も
We have a lot of people here who are involved in product
まさに
development.
この AI でその
So in this AI era,
根本からラディカルな変化を迫られているというふうに
how we do product
で
management might change
まあ国内の事
radically.
例国内の事例も含めて
There might be some examples that we have seen overseas from Japan. We use a lot of advanced technology, witness a lot of advancement in technology. Even internally, we have experimented different things. So I would like to welcome the product heads of what they think about this topic.
じゃあ最初ちょっとリーさん
Maybe Lee.
まず僕と古澤さんの距離が近い。
Yes, so
ちょっとね、なんか
our proximity is very near, first of all.
古澤さんのこと好きですけど。
Yeah, I really like Furusawa, but I think it's too near.
すみません、ありがとうございます。ですね、まずちょっと最初今日
Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for coming into this session today.
そのプロダクトマネジメントの業務に今従事されている方って今どのぐらい
Raise of hand, how many of you are involved in product management right now?
ありがとうございます。エンジニアとかの方
How about engineers? Raise of hand.
ありがとうございます。じゃあ大体半分
Okay, so maybe 50-50.
領域見られているというところでそこも前提に入れてお話ししたいと思います。でまず
Okay, so
AI はもう
First of all,
ワクワクもするし
AI
やばいとも思ってます。
it's really exciting, but at the same time, it's very risky.
で特にまあ一方で僕もプロダクトマネージャーとしては
But on the other hand, I've been a product manager for 10 years now in my career.
感じはすごくしてまして
And I feel like I'm going back to my roots. For example, product manager, we shouldn't look at the how, but we should focus more on the why. And I think in this AI era, this has been accelerating. And as you know, as AI come into the picture, I think how we do coding have changed immensely. And then now, how we do product development in the upstream, for example, specifications, engineers are more involved in that. So the question is, do we need product manager to be involved in that now? I think that's something that we look at. So we always need to look at the root, right? At the origins. Why we are doing this, why we are creating this, what kind of value we want to bring to the table. So in this session today,
その議論を経て今僕らがどうやってるのかっていうところを結構ベースにやってる。
I would like to talk about what kind of discussion we have been doing and what we are trying to do. But yep, that's all from my side. Yes, thank you so much for saying that, bringing up the keyword of going back to the origins. And yes, as Lee said, exactly what you said, very exciting, but at the same time, it can be quite risky. You can come up with new ideas at a very speedy manner. That's very exciting, but at the same time, let's say a lot of us are doing that concurrently. It might potentially become a threat. So when you think about product development, if you want to create a service like Mercari from the surface, at the surface level, it's very easy to copy and paste that, right? And we need to think about what differentiates us from others. How can we differentiate ourselves from other people? Because right now in the AI era, everything can be so easily duplicated. And as you mentioned just now, we need to really look at the why, the reasoning behind what we are doing, why we are doing what we are doing.
ありがとうございます。まさにそういった課題意識と健全な
Yes, so be alert about the issues and the risks, being excited about the new changes. If you look at our Mercari demographic, or how many people are involved in the product development, there's a lot of us involved in it. So I think the question is, how are we going to transform how we approach things? We have been taking on that challenge on a day-to-day basis. Of course, technology-wise, we are taking on a new challenge, as well as organization-wise. HR as well as product leaders have been working together to really be in alignment about what we want to do together. So the next part here is how Mercari is driving its transformation internally. Maybe we can talk about the current challenges we are taking on right now and what's the vision that we have in mind. Maybe Furusawa? Yes, maybe I can talk about the brief context behind this topic as well. As mentioned just now, what engineers can do have expanded, and the speed of that has accelerated too. And at the same time, what PMs can do have expanded as well. For example, specification, you can create that really quickly now, and also surveys. You can also collect data information really quickly in order to form that. But of course, there's some information that you need to collect. But basically, individual productivity have improved vastly, and I think this applies for other companies as well. But PM and engineers, it's not enough just to have PMs and engineers. We also need BI, analytics members, designers. We need different members to develop a product. And what Mercari encountered is that, yes, we have improved productivity on the individual level. And at the same time, we face a lot of communication bottlenecks. For example, engineers, let's say if they create their own thing, they release their own thing, then the product will be chaotic, so sometimes it's not feasible. So the bottleneck right now is the communication internally between members, and be in alignment about what we want to create to begin. And for example, we cannot just continuously release it, but in order to release it in a consistent manner, what we can do, all those communication had to be done, and that became a bottleneck. And as one engineer can do more, for example, we used to need 3 teams to take on one project, but now one individual perhaps can take on that same project. these communication bottleneck have become a new issue that came up. So we need to define what's the roles and responsibilities, the expectation for each of the roles as we move forward. And I think that's something that we have been doing in the past 6 months. For example, PMs are responsible to create the specification and then bring that to the engineers, and engineers do that. I think that was the traditional way of doing things, and we need to remove that. So that's something that we started from. So removing all those initial expectations that we were familiar with. Yeah, Lee, do you want to jump in here? Yes, as Furusawa mentioned, if you are at a company where you can use AI, yes, maybe productivity have improved, but at the same time, you need to think about the product life cycle. It's a more long-term thing. You need to be clear on what kind of issues you want to resolve. And then from there, reflect that to the actual user experience, implement that and deliver to the customers, and then learn from that, and then start the cycle again. We need to do this in order to fully utilize AI, I believe. So product managers, not just product managers, but other members as well. So you need to really question from the start. So restructuring everything from the start and questioning if this is necessary. So we have been communicating our ideal state. I mean, of course, a lot of trials and errors have to be done. A lot of things are not finalized, but that's something that we have been trying out. Yes, so to deliver more value to our customers, we need to think about how we want to utilize AI, how can we improve our throughput. Organization can be complicated, everything is interconnected. We are trying to solve a very complicated, complex issues, but as you can see from the slide here, what do you think are the challenges that we are facing right now? What do you think is working well, and what do you think we are still struggling with right now? Maybe Furusawa, you can talk about that. Yes, Sachi, you showed the slide just now, and I think some people might be wondering what this is about. So just now I talked about the issues that we are facing, and for example, for us, we have kicked off certain projects, and we have been very familiar with the traditional way of doing things. And as you implement new way of doing things, it might cause a bit of confusion. And as we mentioned before, we want to start things in a POC approach. And this is what this project is about. And this diagram explains how we revamp the development style. So our expectation is that we want to do more things with a fewer number of people. So we use AI, and then we want to improve the product quality, increase the number of output as well. So in other words, one people can create many things. So, but if you create something that's of lower quality, then it defeats the purpose. So we want to create something of high quality and many high quality output as an individual level.
And there are basically 3 roles that come into play: product manager, product engineer, and enabler. There are 3 roles that will be taking on the product development in this POC. So the key would be the product manager and product engineer. So the general product development flow at Mercari is described at the top of this slide. So we first start from the discovery phase. We try to identify the pain point and problem, and then we try to articulate how we want to address and solve that problem, and then we will do the definition, the requirement definition, and the specifications, and then we deliver that to our customers, users. And after that, through marketing initiative, we will try to grow. And if it doesn't work, we will go through the learning process. And with that takeaway, we come back to square one, the discovery stage. I think this is a general product development flow. So based upon that, we have been doing this experiment. And to touch upon the new idea, although I believe there are some businesses that are already taking this approach, which is that product manager will purely focus on discovery phase. And also, post-release learning will also be the other focus for product manager. But on the other hand, product engineers, that's how we call them in this experiment. So the product engineers, I think there were some cases where are developing what was defined, but product engineers will also be involved in defining what we will be developing, and also after the release, whether that delivery is working well, they will also look through that too. So basically, we're expanding their scope of responsibilities. So this is the basic expectation on the product engineer. So through the discovery, the product manager will identify the problem, and this is how we want to address them. Once that is defined, the product engineers will be developing based on that. But there are a couple of things that are described here. For example, mock-up. So let's try to develop a mock-up. We say build first and discuss first. Build first and discuss faster. So that's how we call it. So let's build something that works first. And then based upon that, let's try to speed up the delivery. And we don't have a clear distinction yet here, but we want the product engineers to get involved in the mock-up effectively. Now, the current expectations that we share commonly inside our company is that the product engineers will have to take on both iOS, Android, and backend. And it's really difficult to do the coding from scratch for iOS development, but we are trying to establish the mechanism and framework that can be done smoothly and easily, so that a single product engineer can write for various platforms, and also by providing AI tool to do the product specifications, the product engineer's capability will expand. So therefore, ultimately, the product engineer will be able to lead the entire phase here, entire phases. So that is the overall picture we have. Thank you. So how the roles of how the roles are shifting was just explained by Furusawa, but the keynote session presented by Kimura, I think you heard the keyword AI pod. So what exactly this AI pod is, could you please talk about that, Lee? Again, the conventional product development flow, it really depends on the size of the project, but we have few product manager, and then we have group engineers, also marketers, designers. That's a general scope. But what we are discussing here is that, as Furusawa mentioned, the capability of one single individual has expanded substantially. Therefore, we're now able to develop product in a much smaller team is the hypothesis where we started from. And actually, that is true in a lot of areas. So AI pod, I think the smaller team could be just a team of 2-3 people, depending on the product that they were working on, or sometimes group of 5. So now we have all these different AI pods. And among the group of AI pods, anyone who is called as product manager, in this slide, their key responsibility or primary responsibility with the discovery phase. And PDE, the product engineer, of course, they will take on the implementation. But as I mentioned, the backend engineer will also implement the iOS front end and so on. So that is the crossover within their roles. But also the product requirement, the specifications that were owned by product manager in the past, that is also handled by product engineer. And also, in the case of Merpay, We also have a lot of discussions back and forth with the legal compliance and other second line defense. So in the past, that was owned by product manager, but now product engineer is also involved in that. So basically, after the discovery phase, we don't want the product manager to be the bottleneck in the subsequent phases. So that's what we're trying to do. I see. Thank you for the explanation.
かなりこう前の体制と比べると
Again, compared to the past
こう
development flow,
何百人規模の
I
人
think
たちのこう期待値とか動き方とか
the expectations on hundreds of people and how the teams are set up, we are trying to shift all that. And I think this is one of the unprecedented transformation that we're trying to drive through inside Mercari at the moment. So currently, it's POC, so we're running this experiment at a very high speed and trying to identify what works, what are the bottlenecks, what are the fundamental challenges that we still need to address. Again, all those lessons are learned and validated with various leaders involved in the journey. And through that process, we're gradually getting some takeaways and learning. And we also see a positive sign too, which is what's working well. I would like to ask Furusa to talk about that. But Lee, as you mentioned in the fintech business, there it is highly regulated area, so we have to take into account in terms of various things in our product development. So addressing such context, I think there are some difficulties. So what are the challenges? We would like to hear about. Okay, then let me start from the opportunity. So the positive areas. Yes, there are certain areas that are being successful and working well. And there are some areas that are not working so well. So that will be explained later. But now, what's working so far is that this work style is starting to take root in our organization. So in the past, we had one, for example, like a product manager, and there is a group of 10 engineers for the development. I think that was the conventional product development structure. But in this new style, there's one product manager, and we have like 3 to 5 product engineers, and also the product engineers. One engineer will have to develop multiple features by themselves. So what's working well is that there are a pretty good amount of teams that are doing this very well. So the product manager will address the high-level problems and also the high-level solutions. Then the features that will deliver that are being developed by product engineers autonomously and being able to lead through the way all the way to shipping the code and releasing it. So in the past, even for the requirement definitions, it involved communication with multiple stakeholders, and we had to run multiple meetings. However, the product managers will start owning from, product engineer will start owning from requirement definitions, and any areas where the design system works well, without the designers, the product engines are able to solidify these specifications and continue to work all the way up to release. So this is something we're not able to kind of expect to happen in the past over product development flow. And even in a situation where we used to say that we can't ship code or release every single week, that can change with this. So product engineer will be owning few features to release. So compared to the past, yes, we have sped up. So that is the positive sign. But again, one product engineer will be owning the full feature. So that is a lot of work. And also there is much more pressure on the single product engineer too. Thank you. Lee, what are the struggles that we are experiencing right now? Sure. To give an easy example, to apply this approach to a big-scale project is extremely hard. If it's a large scale, in the past, let's say, if it was a project that required dozens of people, trying to achieve the same goal with a group of 5, it's not that easy. So how to adopt this approach is the key and the difficulty that we see. And how we break down on the problems, maybe that's something that we can be creative and change. In the past projects, substantially, we did have some different areas of responsibilities divided by different people and teams. So should we do that or not is one question. If we try to group by features, then we will just fall back to the conventional approach. So maybe it is more about categorizing by at a higher level problems that we want to tackle with. So that's something we're still trying to figure out. And in the context of fintech business and Merpay, there are a lot of regulatory requirements that we must satisfy. There was a case where we tried to do it without the product manager, and actually there was a case that went out successfully because the regulatory requirements, it's all that are kind of fixed and locked in, and it's a matter of how fast can we release that. However, if it's a laws and regulations that we have to interpret and try to adopt in our business, then if we try to leave that to the engineers to handle that, then engineers have to come up with the questions that they need to check with the risk and compliance, person in charge, or any areas that need to be handled. It really highly depended on each individual. So that was a case where the product managers had to intervene. So how we can expand the capability of each member is one thing, and to the so-called product engineer, what are the exact expectations that we are going to set? All of those problems and questions are something that we need to answer. And as Furusawa mentioned, even in a successful project, there is a case that people can work unlimitedly. So the product manager will take care of the discovery stage. And beyond that, the rest of the subsequent steps will take place, can occur without any interruption. Then the bottleneck will be on you. So you will be the bottleneck. So if you can't do it, then we will just stop. But people who is highly motivated can keep working relentlessly. And if the managers are not able to oversee that, there is a high risk that those individuals can potentially burn out. So as an organization, we do need to set some guardrails, and that's more about people management perspectives. So these are the things that surfaced in this 6 months of POC. So from the engineers who are participating in the POC, we do hear voices from them saying that this is so hard, I can't work this hard, because if I take a leave, then the project will get behind the schedule. So that's what we started to hear too. So product engineers assigned as an owner of one feature and taking full accountability on that was what we were talking about. But for example, assigning secondary engineers so that we have the right backup support is the ongoing discussions right now internally. I see. Thank you so much for sharing all the highlights and also the lowlights as well. So all of those are being addressed as we're moving forward. And since this event is called as Career Fest, I'm sure there are a lot of participants in this room who are joining because they are interested in seeking a career opportunity with Mercari. And I think we saw a lot of engineers join this session today. So the product managers and product engineers, so how their roles are shifting going forward. And where do you find the excitement or people who have who can get excited with the expectations is something maybe we can touch upon. So could you please talk about that? Now first, product managers, I may derail a little bit, but we have always had this theory of product managers are mini CEOs. So what I mean by that, you need to have a broad visibility, you have to be able to oversee a wider scope. And I think what comes into that scope is changing. In terms of the product development, there are more and more areas that can be left up to other roles. Then, in the product development, the expectations on the product managers will change to about what kind of problems can you try to identify and try to come up with the right solutions. I think that requires a very high expertise. So maybe in the past, the product manager was more like a generalist, being able to have that broader view. However, on the discovery phase. So really focusing on that phase and facing those problems that we want to identify and solve. So it's more like a specialist. I think that is the kind of the shift that we're starting to see. And this is happening in general, not just limited to Mercari.
So I think we are really betting on that, and within the team, for example, you say, okay, I want to do discovery. It's not that level, but you need to really also think about the expectations. For example, for the PM, what's the expectations for that, and as we utilize AI, what kind of change it brings. I think we are in the pioneer of making that that change or that evolution. But having that said, I don't think you need to think about, okay, I'm doing discovery phase perfectly, because we are trying to, for example, maybe you're interested in this phase, maybe you're curious about the phase, and then you try to take on new opportunities. I think that will also work. Yep, I think Lee, you talk about the PDM role. Maybe Furusawa, you can talk about the engineering side of things, maybe the PDE side of things. Yes, by the way, I was an engineer at Mercari, and then I became a product manager. That's my career path so far. I think there's plenty of potential here. If I can, I want to be an engineer because I like to create things. Why I'm doing product management is because I want to decide on what I want to create. And I think there's huge opportunity here because I think engineers are able to make a lot of decisions moving forward in this process. And then discovery, you can see that there's a bit of gradation here. The expectation here is that we expect people to take on different roles. For example, we need to think about the issue, the solution, but we also want product engineers to be involved in this process so that we can collaboratively think about the solution. And in terms of the decision making, we want the product engineers to take on that role. And for bigger companies, maybe the process is that you ask the QA to do the QA, and then you ask the ops team to take on different roles. I think some companies take on that process, but now for us, we want to take on that whole process on our own. For example, I didn't expect myself to take on Android and iOS development, but with this structure, you'll be able to take on different hats. For example, you can wear different hats like backend, iOS, Android. I believe a lot of engineers here have an idea of what kind of product you want to deliver and what kind of product to develop. So being able to be involved in these different phases and being able to witness this and deliver this to our customers, I think it was very exciting for engineers in general. Yes, I think we have 12 more minutes. I would like to go to the last question, and then we can proceed to Q&A. So how AI unlocks the potential of Mercari's products is the next topic. So I think there's different changes taking on right now at the company. And at the end of the day, we want to deliver different values to our customers. And from a product perspective, what do you think are the potential that AI can unlock? Maybe Lee? Yes, thank you so much. So AI and product, when you think of it together, I like to think about the product development process, yes, but I also like to think about how it impacts the product itself. I think personally, I like to think about that. And what I interpret from this is you'll be able to give meaning to different data with this approach. So
で例えば
Last time we already have vast amount of data. And for example, Merpay,
で例を出すと決済のデータで誰がいつ
transaction
どこでいく
data,
ら買ったかみたいな
who bought what,
構造化された
when,
フォーマット化されたデータを取り扱ってますと。
we have
で
those
これで
data
これ買いましたとかこれが履歴ですとか
and we have this transaction history.
これが状況なんですけどこの今回LLM に代表されるような AI が出てきたことによって
And as we utilize AI
その例えば写真とかも
or LLM,
音声とかもそうです
maybe we have audio, image, the
そのところを
unstructured,
そのまま
multimodal as
そのま
well.
まそこに意味付けをしてそのまま出力できる
So you'll be able to
ここの中
attach
裏側の
meaning to those unstructured data.
の変化みたいな
So how we
もポテンシャ
engage
ル
with
の中
data, how we look at data changes, I feel.
割とそこに決まってんのかなっていうふうに思ってます。でちょっと例えば例とかを出す
So
と
for example, maybe I
あの
can give
ちょ
you
っと
another
海
example.
外の例なんですけど
An
レボリュー
example
トっていう
from
会社が
overseas,
ありまして
there's this
レボリュートとか
company called
やってる
Revolut.
決済アプリの会社なんですけど
It's a
これがすご
financial
い面白
app.
いのが
Something that's very interesting is that
トランザクションデータってさっき言った通り構造化されたデータです。
transaction data is a structured data,
なんですけど
right?
そこから言える
And
のは例えば
what they're doing
あ
is,
るお客様が
for example, a customer
アプリを見て残高はいくらか確認しま
is
す。
checking their sales balance on the app, and let's say maybe they go to a convenience store in the middle of the night, and then the next day they look at the balance. So let's say if you can look at the chain of behavior there, and maybe we can predict, oh, maybe this person needs some funds, and then being able to attach meaning to that chain of behavior. So being able to predict that is something that they are taking on. They are creating a model to decipher that. So structured data and are deciphered as unstructured data, and then reflecting that to our customer experience is something that's very interesting approach that they're taking. So we want to innovate at Mercari and reflect that to our product. So I keep asking myself what we can do at our company. Yeah, there are some things that I can tell you today and some things that I cannot. So yeah, that's my general thought. Yes, for me, being able to personalize, I think it's a very big deal here. For example, maybe in the past we used to have a vast amount of ambiguous data, but now you'll be able to generate something in real time. Like for example, how that relates back to product is, for example, just now we talk about the behavior, being able to predict what that person is going through, and providing a UI and an interface based on that. I think that's very revolutionary. Another example I can give is, for example, Mercari customers. There's a big maturity gap. For example, as a product, we emphasize on making it easy to use even for first-time users, but we also have heavy users. And so far, we were not able to tailor a feature for heavy users, but now we are able to use that data or see that data and then give a tailored experience or UI for that users, and on top of that in real time. For example, listing. For normal user, maybe they list one item, and that's already counted as a lot already. But for heavy users, some of them even list 100 items per day. And giving the same UI doesn't make sense. Maybe we can give like a bulk listing feature. Maybe if it's a first-time user, then we will be able to explain one by one. You can input the price here, etc., etc. So giving a tailored experience, user experience, I think is important, and that's something that we can do with AI. Now, when you think about the context of Mercari, I think we have really valuable amount of data. Merpay may be transaction data, and Mercari, what's unique to us is that you can buy, a user can buy or sell.
その人が何を買ったかっていうところで判断して、
you'll be able to decipher what the person have interest in based on what they buy, for example. And for us,
より高解像度にできますよっていうのはあるんですけど、もう一個はやっぱ
one more thing that you can do is, for example, what you sell. And what you sell, at one point of their life, they might have interest in before, right? And maybe for my case, maybe I have a small child, and then my child grew up, and then now I can sell the milk bottle. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is that you can personalize in different angles, and that might also lead to improvement or in numbers in terms of number of transactions. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential that we can explore, definitely. Yes, there's a lot of things that we want to do for product development, and as we use the AI technology, we want to slowly decipher how we can unlock the different potentials, and that's something that we are working on currently as a company. I think we still have about 5 more minutes. Maybe we can move on to Q&A. Any questions? Yes, thank you for the valuable talk session. You talked about unstructured data, and you said that you want to utilize activity log and personalize experience for our customers. I was looking at the JD, job description, and I believe we are trying to create different products, B2C shops, etc., etc. So my question is, as Mercari, as a group, what's the product vision? What's the future vision here? I want to ask this question to the higher ups management here. What kind of vision you have for the organization? Yeah, so basically, I think everything ties into the company mission. We want to create a platform where we circulate different forms of value, and then we want to unlock the potential along the way. I think that's the general vision that we have. And for example, for my case, I'm looking at overseeing a marketplace, and different items are being circulated in the marketplace, for example. So maybe we can deliver more value in that circulation, and then by circulating that value, then we can enable more people to do different things. I think that's the major breakthrough here. And for example, yeah, maybe I shouldn't talk too much. Yeah, for myself, Merpay is a payment service, but we don't want to box ourselves in too much. For example, Merpay, yes, we do handle money and funds, and Mercari, we handle transaction of items. So when you think about code payment, that's just one aspect of it, right? We have the base foundation, and then we want to create a new experience on top of that base foundation. That's something that we want to do. Yes, we have the party later on, so if you have any additional questions, feel free to ask later. I think there's another question just now. Maybe a last question before we close the session. Yes, thank you for the talk session. You talked about PDM and engineer roles just now. So I'm in charge of BizDev, PDM, and my question is, let's say the value that we bring to the table is more towards the discovery side of things, but how do we take action? What's the expectation? Do we want to have more PDM, or do we want to focus more on the quality of the output? So I'm just wondering what's your view on this. Yeah, I think to answer you, I think both are important. PDM I expected to create a high quality output and as many output as possible as well. So spending or investing in discovery. And I think product manager have been doing a lot of the project management tasks so far. For example, asking when you can release. And then some engineers might think, oh, why are you asking that question? But I think moving forward, those tasks will be reduced. And then you'll be focusing more on the discovery side of tasks. Yeah, I think there's no right or wrong answer. For example, Mercari, maybe we want more people to shop on Mercari. There's different things that we can think of, right? And there's different answers that we can think of. And we had different metrics that we were looking at. That's one way of doing product development, I feel. And there's a lot of logical way of thinking of resolving things, but at the end of the day, who are using our service are human beings, and sometimes human beings can be not logical, and sometimes there's no logical answer to certain questions. So maybe we can think about maybe this experience, user experience, might make sense for certain users. So by taking on this approach and by having more PMs that are able to take this approach, I think we can generate more of those ideas. Yes, we want to have more time, but unfortunately, it's almost time. So we are going to close this session. Thank you so much for joining us for 45 minutes.